I mean, I know a lot of type 1 diabetics with perfect A1Cs who follow Bernstein's sort of dietary recommendations,
Yeah.
and they don't do any intermittent, but well, I wouldn't say any, but they're not snacking at bedtime. And then,
Yeah.
so they're having their 3 square meals per day. Yeah, perfect blood sugar control. So, I mean, hearing us talk about fasting, don't think that, oh, it's something you must do to have perfect blood sugar controls. No, it's something else you can do to perhaps optimize your health or regain insulin sensitivity. But you can have, I know you can have perfect blood sugars, having 3 set meals per day, no snacks in between, and most definitely no snack, not even cheese or nuts at bedtime.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you should be able to, I think some people may do that and then, feel they're using a lot of insulin. They feel they might be insulin sensitive, and yeah, they might want to consider fasting therapeutically, and like think of it that way. Some people just might be more insulin sensitive and not have to deal with that, or maybe they sleep better, maybe they get more exercise, maybe they have less stress, and there's a lot of factors there. And yeah, and I think the important thing is that, like, diabetics shouldn't be afraid to do a fast if they need to. And again, like, you should do fasts to test your basal rate. Like, that's an essential part of management, I would say. But yeah, I think it's something, yeah, definitely not to be afraid of, but use it if it's benefiting you.
Yeah. And if you are a menopausal woman, you should do it because your hormones are changing rapidly. So you should do it once a month, or at least once every 2 months.
Yeah.
But it all comes down to empowerment and knowledge. And many people just aren't supported by physicians, and that drives me crazy. I mean, it's the situation in the UK is very similar to the US. ADA still not recommending low carbohydrate diet. They just mention it as, one option if you want, if you want to be healthier, just, that's something else you can do, but it's not the default recommendation. It's the same in the UK. I don't understand why it wouldn't be the default recommendation, because we don't have functioning pancreases. So,
yeah. It's they're still dragging their feet on this kind of stuff, and I've even seen it, just by these organizations discouraged for type 1s because of the potential of having a low blood sugar, and which is ridiculous, and yeah, actually they might be right, because they're offering no support on how to actually go about doing those diets. So yeah, if you don't change your insulin and you go on a low carb diet, you're going to go low. You definitely are. And I don't call lows hypoglycemia. I call it an insulin overdose. So yeah, you're taking too much insulin and you just overdosed on that medication. And a low carb diet is going to need a lot less insulin, a lot less of that medication, and therefore less chance of an insulin overdose and less chance for a hypoglycemia.
Yeah. And insulin overdose is more common, of course, in people who are eating, starches like pasta. I remember I was there after pizza. No matter what I did, I would have a huge spike and then a massive crash. And of course, as I'm crashing down, I would start feeling hypoglycemic, even if I weren't hypoglycemic, but I would start the same symptoms. That really is a very tiring, exhausting experience.
Yeah.
That can be avoided by just following the law of small numbers, as Dr. Bernstein says. Your errors will be much, much smaller if you are taking smaller doses of insulin, because you are not having the carbohydrates or having very minimal amount of carbohydrates.
Sure. Yeah, totally.
Because errors can't be avoided. I mean, I make errors. You think after 44 years, I just have the hang of it, but I don't. I mean, I do make the occasional errors because you don't even know how much of the food you're eating is going to be digested and at what speed, what rate.
Totally. Yeah. The law of small numbers and kind of being as predictable as you can. does the best to mitigate that, but there's going to be times that you have to correct. And you know, with the low carb approach, it's like you kind of have your lows, you have high lows and low highs, basically.
Yes.
You know, so they're easy to fix.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
which actually takes me to blood sugar fluctuations, because they are, isolated from your A1C level. It's your blood sugar fluctuations that also have a big impact, perhaps even bigger impact on your health and diabetes complications.
Yeah.
Tell us about those blood sugar fluctuations, because I know people with good A1Cs, and then you look at their CGM, they're high and low and high and low, but of course their A1Cs comes up normal. So
yeah. Well, normal probably, you know, 5.8, and they're told that they're doing an outstanding job and they're good. But yeah, the high blood sugars are the root cause of all diabetic complications. They damage our every cell and organ in our body. So avoiding that is how you avoid all the long-term complications of diabetes. And it's even, if you just look at the guidelines for, because they're kind of moving away from A1C so much. The American Diabetes Association's, probably your diabetes association as well. And because A1Cs are so bad amongst type 1 diabetics, they're stressing it less. And now it's the whole time in range thing. And that's their big stress. So the American Diabetes Association wants you between 70 and 180.
Exactly the same in the
time in range. And they say on top, that range is already bad enough. Like,
yes,
that is that is diabetic blood sugars. 180 is more than double a normal blood sugar. That's not healthy. It's damaging our bodies. So they say 70, 180, 70% of the time. So
that's for the UK followers, so that's between 4 and 4 millimoles and 10. So if you're under the sort of illusion that, if you're running just under 10, 9 all day long, you're in range and you're doing very well. No, think again.
So they're not even saying, even if they were to say 100% of the time you're in that range, you're going to be healthy. They're not even saying that. They're saying 70. So that's, I guess, 6 hours out of the day that you can be above 180. It's insane. And yeah, that's why complications are basically inevitable in type 1 diabetics, because those of us that are truly normalizing things are a very, very, very small minority. And the vast majority of diabetics are following that range, and these high blood sugars are damaging their retinas, they're damaging their kidneys, the autonomic nerves. You before the call you mentioned gastroparesis, and that's neuropathy to the autonomic nerves that control your stomach. And so once those are damaged, now you don't have a predictable digestive system, which it makes blood sugars even worse, because food sitting in your stomach, you just took insulin. Now the insulin's working and you're going low, so you take glucose. Okay, now the food's digesting and the blood sugar goes back up, and it makes it really difficult to control blood sugars once you have damage to those autonomic nerves. Not to kind of discourage people who might have these complications out there, because these nerves do repair themselves. However, you need normal blood sugars for that to happen. Otherwise, any new growth is going to just be destroyed by high blood sugars. So it can be a challenge at first when especially with gastroparesis, if you're dealing with kind of high blood sugars and that. But it's crucial that you do normalize things if you want those things to heal and get better. And Bernstein has a whole chapter in his book on gastroparesis.
Full chapter on how to manage gastroparesis.
Yeah, it's a real problem.
Yeah, it is a problem. It is a problem, because then it adds to the unpredictability. You don't know. So that's delayed stomach emptying. So because of the nerves, the damage in the nerves.
Yeah.
Vagus nerve, I understand.
Exactly.
So, so it's an added challenge that we can actually do without.
It is. But it's something that if you have that, that should be more motivation to just kind of get that under control and fixed before things get worse. And it's gonna help hurt your health in other ways. So it's possible to get these under control. Yeah, it's a challenge, but it is very possible to do. And so anyone out there that has these kinds of issues, you definitely can deal with it and get things better.
Yeah, and there are detailed tips in Bernstein's book on what you can try to solve your problem. What was I going to talk about? CGMs.
Yeah.
Use a CGM. How important is your CGM to you? I couldn't live without mine.
Yeah, I think it's great. And it's like, I mean, how would I have known at 3 a.m. that I had a high blood sugar last night without it? And hey, Bernstein, there's a misconception that he doesn't like pumps and CGMs. He's fine with all that stuff, but you have to know the limitations of those devices. But before CGMs, he would have people wake up in the middle of the night to test your blood sugar. Mm-hmm. That's not fun to do. But how else are you going to know what you are at 3 a.m. if you don't test? But yeah, I think they're amazing, and they're getting better and better. I'm using the Dexcom, and you're using a Libre, I think.
I'm using the Libre, and I will use this opportunity to actually, share my frustration about it. Yeah. You go on. So you generally
I find the latest Dexcom is pretty accurate, and I've been happy with it. Now, they're like I kind of mentioned before, the CGMs are not measuring your blood; it's measuring interstitial fluid. So it's like 20 minutes or so behind your blood, and that's always important to keep in mind, especially if your pump is linked into it. You got to keep that in mind. If you're dehydrated, your CGM is gonna be off too, because that fluid is now more concentrated when you're dehydrated, and it may look like your blood sugar is higher than it really is. So you may see that and then take insulin, and you really didn't need that insulin. You were just dehydrated. It's important, if you do make, big corrections, to check your blood sugar with a finger stick to be sure. And there's also like the pressure lows. If you lay on top of it in bed, it may look like you're low. I also find too, I don't know what the latest Libre model is and how that is, but I find they tend to run a little higher. So I've had a few patients that are using a Libre, and they're seeing these high numbers, and we finger stick and it's much lower. We check their A1C; it doesn't represent those higher numbers. Are you finding that with the Libre?
Well, I'm on the 2. I believe you have the 2. So now in the UK, Libre 3, which is even smaller, is available, but I don't believe it's available in the US just yet. So I'm on Libre 2 with the alarm system.
Yeah.
It's different for different people. Yeah. But mine
is good.
Is, I would say, 99% accurate.
Oh, that's good.
Apart from day 1. So the first 24 hours aren't always accurate. And the last day, for some reason, the very last day. So when I'm just, heading to the last few hours, it just plays crazy. It just gives me constant lows and highs and it just drives me crazy. I have to switch the alarm off. I know that I have to change it. So quite often I actually change my sensor or switch to a new sensor. So I'm not experiencing that, crazy high and low. It literally does drive me crazy. It's not accurate, of course. So it tends to happen in the last 4 to 6 hours.
That's good. That's good. That's good that it's accurate for you. And people have to double check. And if it's like you and they're finding that it is accurate, and then that's great. And if you're in a routine and you're seeing a number that you scratch your head on, definitely double check with a finger stick and verify it and see. And but otherwise, I think they're amazing, and getting to a point where it's an essential part of management is to have a CGM.
Yeah, double check if something doesn't make sense, and especially if you don't have hyper awareness, or you don't have much hyper awareness. So it might be worthwhile checking with
a lot of diabetics don't like that non-diabetics are getting CGMs now. But I think it's fine. And, there was a lot of, it's the same thing. Like when Dr. Bernstein was trying to advocate that diabetics should have a glucometer, at that time, doctors were like, no, patients can't have their own blood sugar testing. They have to come to us. But I'm glad that now even CGMs are getting more accessible. It's going to mean that the prices are going to get better. There's going to be more different companies coming up with them and more competition. It's just going to be better for diabetics that more people are using them. And there's a kind of funny social media account, the Blood Sugar King. Have you ever seen that guy? He eats different foods. He's a non-diabetic. He eats different foods and just shows what spike it does to him. And Blood Sugar King.
Oh, I didn't know. No, but there is another one on Instagram who does exactly the same. Glucose Goddess.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's and again, a lot of diabetics don't like this, and they're like, "Oh, I can eat this food. I just take my insulin, whatever." No, it's just showing you. It's just showing you how much that food has effect on a non-diabetic, which is informative to us too, because that drives how much insulin we're going to need. That it drives how variable those numbers are going to be after. And yeah, so it's interesting to watch those and see the effect of those different foods. I mean, we know what those foods are. That's why we eat this way, but it's a really nice to see that kind of practical demonstration.
What are those foods? Let's go through the list. I mean, it's rocket science.
This guy's on his social media. He does literally everything. He does low carb foods too, just to show you that they're good. He rice, potatoes, sweet potatoes, fruit, berries, and yeah, you'll see it all. You'll see it all, and what the good foods are and what the bad foods are. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We were talking about CGMs. What I don't like about the Libre is that their default system has from 4 to 10. So in your measurements up to 180, so 70 to 180 as the target range. So now I'm checking my graphs, etc. I don't want that to be my target range. I want to be able to maneuver the setting. It doesn't give me the option to change those settings. Even an alarm, high glucose alarm, you can set it to a specific number. So you want it to ring at that number, alarm at that number, to prevent, going higher. You want to take action, when you're there, for example. And it doesn't give you the option. I mean, why? The options are there.
I know. It's the same with the Dexcom. However, they do let you do that window 70 to 120. So 120 is the lowest you can set the high to.
It's the same with Libre. Yeah, that really is just, I don't like that, because I don't want to hit 120 before I take action.
Yeah, I would actually set it to 100 if I could, because by the time it hits 120, if you did a finger stick, then your probably blood is 120 or 30 or 40 by that point. And so then you have to correct, and you have all these delays. So if I knew when I was trending towards 100 earlier, and I can always just manually look as well, and I do that, but getting that kind of alert, then you can get a head start on that and not have to deal with those corrections after.
I recently put out a tweet about that, just shared my frustration, not for the first time, but that's it has to be more user friendly and catered for, I think. All diabetics, and those on low carbohydrate diet perhaps should have or should be allowed to have their own settings, because we're running on lower numbers, which isn't the standard. We're running on lower numbers. And
it gets annoying, because like the low on the low end, the 70, I start when I'm in the 60s, I start looking and watching, and kind of like you, I don't always correct if it's saying 67 and I'm a flat line across, and I'm fine. Low carb, we have fatty acids and ketones helping our body run efficiently, and our blood sugars naturally in a non-diabetic will run in that range. It will depend on the context, and if it's 67 and it's plummeting, then yeah, then I would correct it. But meanwhile, the alarm's beeping and I can't turn it off when it's at that point. So it is kind of annoying.
Yeah.